Toronto man who recently returned from Miami was diagnosed with COVID-19. And Kelly Linehan, this serves as a cautionary tale, right?
It really does. We've been talking about what the symptoms are. We know what the symptoms are, but luckily, at least for us here, Gurdeep, and so many of you at home, you don't know what it actually feels like to have COVID-19. That is not the same story for David Anzarouth. We're so grateful for your time today, David, and we hope you're feeling okay. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Yes, I'm feeling much better today.
We talked yesterday and you were very stuffed up, so you're already sounding a little bit better here. But can you walk me through the timeline? You went to Miami, you returned to Toronto about a week or so ago. When did you start feeling sick?
Yes, so on March 11th, I flew back to Toronto from Miami directly. As soon as I returned home, I came straight home from the airport. I felt tired. I felt sluggish. I had a bit of a headache. I chalked this up to being, traveling for the last day. I stayed home that night. I made myself food that I had in my apartment, and I went to bed early because I was going to work from home the next day. I had let my boss know at work that somebody within my group was feeling ill after our vacation. And I said, best I stay home, best I work from home and manage this as it progresses. Thursday, I started feeling exponentially worse. My head started pounding. I felt as if I was drugged. I felt as if I couldn't, I wasn't myself. If we're operating at 100%, I was at 20%. I was able to sit on my couch and work from my laptop, but do pretty much nothing else. By about 6 p.m., I put on a movie, I finished work, and I immediately passed out. When I woke up, I was drenched in a pool of sweat. I was shivering. I was having such intense chills and sweats. I had felt like I was flattened. It was as if a truck had hit me. My symptoms were getting increasingly worse, and my fever was climbing at that point. I immediately went to bed, took some acetaminophen and tried to sleep. But at that point, I was very hard to control my breathing. I was really, really disoriented, really dizzy, and the headache was unlike something I'd ever felt.
So you wrote about this all in an Instagram post too. The severe body aches you're talking about, the most intense chills and sweats, and completely congested. A lot of us hear about the respiratory symptoms, the making it hard to breathe. How did that feel for you? Because I imagine that might be one of the scariest symptoms with this.
Yeah, it definitely was strange. It was something like I had never felt before. I knew I was sick. I knew, I had a weakened immune system. I was on vacation the week prior, and I was doing a bit of partying in Miami, and so I was expecting to feel, sluggish coming home. This was something completely different. There was a tightness in my chest. There were points in the evening where over the night when I was trying to sleep that I would be gasping for air, and it wasn't so much that I couldn't get the air. It's that I was so disoriented. I was so dizzy. I was so completely out of it trying to sleep. I wasn't sure what was going on. I was trying to breathe, and I was having difficulty doing so.
So, luckily, a friend finally urged you to go to the ER. You do that. You go through all these tests, a battery of tests from doctors and nurses, all in full gowns, and they're talking to you through a wall. That's how you're communicating. What was that experience like, and what was the testing process like?
So I went to the emergency room at Toronto General. I made myself there, or I made my way there on my own, and I was immediately seen. They took my information. They had a series of questions that they had to ask, which I was prepared to answer. They took me to triage, where they took my temperature, they checked my vitals, and asked a few more questions. They then took me to a holding room that had 3 chairs, all separated by at least about 2.5 meters. I sat there for about 20 minutes until they could prepare the room beside me, which they called their clean room. They took me from the holding room into the clean room and directed me, kind of speaking to me about 5 meters away. And they put me into the room. The room had sliding glass doors, and they communicated to me through the sliding glass doors any sort of time that they were going to come in and test me for something. So the doctor introduced himself. He put himself into full gown, mask, gloves, etc. They tested me for all influenzas. They tested me for the COVID-19, which was a large swab up my left nostril. And then they instructed me that they were going to do chest x-rays to test for pneumonia to make sure that I wasn't experiencing any pneumonia. This whole time, everybody was extremely nice. Everybody extremely was very communicative. But it was all done through closed doors, and that's really to protect themselves from what I had at that point. We didn't know that I was going to test positive. There was obviously the suspicion, but they were doing everything they could to protect themselves. They're our frontline workers, and I completely understood, the measures that they were taking to protect themselves and to protect me, right? So.
Well, now you're back at home. We know that. You were sent home. After you were sent home, you got that, positive test for COVID-19. And so this has been about a week or so of these pretty intense symptoms. We're lucky to see that you're on the mend. We're happy to see that. What's your message for people out there that maybe aren't taking this seriously yet?
Stay home. This virus affects everybody differently. Yes, we've heard the symptoms and the cases of the really intense symptomatic patients, but you can walk and you can be asymptomatic and still be a carrier for this virus. I've tried my best to stay self-isolated and quarantine myself throughout the entire time I've been showing symptoms and when I returned home from vacation. But there are people that, might have it and just don't know, and they're going out and walking around and going to supermarkets and they're going to the grocery store and they're going to the mall or they're going shopping. And yes, we're at a time where this is not a huge we don't have a huge population that has tested positive, but we're going to overwhelm the system if we continue to not be practicing safe social distancing to the fullest extent. It's extremely important. And over the week, I've had the opportunity to be in bed and basically watch through social media of people doing this. And it's I urge you to stop. I urge you to stay home and stay alone and social distance yourself to the fullest extent.
Yeah. Okay. David, thank you for your time. And again, continue to feel better. We're hoping the best for you, okay, my friend? Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, and let's end on that message, too. If you can stay home, if you don't have to work, which many of you don't have to do, stay home. It's the safest thing for everybody. Gurdeep.
Really powerful message there. Great interview, Kelly, and thanks to David for that.